Welcome to the Not All Love and Life podcast. I'm your host, Romy Moreno, and today we have Denise Castro. She is the founder of Virtual Mom Collective. She's the vice president of Neucor Construction, a woman in construction. I love that.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Really happy to have you here. You have a beautiful story, and I'd just like you to start by telling the audience, the listeners, who you are.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again, Romy. I know we go way back from our days when you hosted us almost 2 years ago for a mother mentor meditation event, which was really special. Really honored to be here. So I'm Denise. I'm the founder of Virtual Mom Collective. We are a non-for-profit organization originally that started during the pandemic to help support working and stay-at-home moms in every facet of their motherhood. We focus on three things here at Virtual Mom Collective, which is giving resources for maternal mental health, financial wellness, and equality in the workplace for working moms. I'm also vice president of Neucor Construction. We are a local South Florida general contractor that focuses on commercial real estate construction mostly. And I've been in that industry for 13 years. And it wasn't really until I became a mother that I felt very called to action on how to support working moms and working women, really, and how to bridge the gap between those two things, career and motherhood aspect wise. So thank you again for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I feel like what you're doing is so important because I personally, when I became a mom, I was so lost. I didn't know how to balance everything. And I lost myself in the sense that my whole identity became being a wife and being a mom. And that's it. I had lost completely who I am, what I liked, what my hobbies are. And it took me a long time, a lot of personal development and work to finally get to that place where I had to realize working on myself and putting myself first is not selfish. So helping other women do the same thing. It's funny when we go through these things, we want to go and help others that are going through similar circumstances, get out, without having to go through such a hard time like we did, right? Because there's resources and there's different things that we could try without it being so difficult. And community is so, so important, which is what you've built.
Yeah, no, 1000%. 1000%. I remember when I became a mom, there is really no manual, right? There's no outline. We do figure out certain things that come naturally to us, right? And instincts, that gut instinct sort of develops. But when we look back to like the roadmap, especially for our generation, I feel like, our mothers and our grandmothers did the best that they could with the roles that they played. And there's really no roadmap or handbook, as they say, for the generation, which is our generation, on how to make, those two things, those two aspects of identity, which could be identified as a career or, a business that you run, and being a mom side by side. Because being a mom shouldn't really be something that you have to pick over, other things that always comes number one, right? So from a perspective of navigating what we've done in the past, which is merge what our former generations did to sort of grow the aspect of a family and navigate a career that doesn't really necessarily exist, because it was a system designed really for our fathers who would, contribute to the household income and go to work, and the mom stayed home to take care of the child. And not to say that being a stay-at-home mom is not a job, because 1000% that is a job, but it's sometimes being a mother is not enough for many of us. It's one of the most fulfilling roles that we can play. So really our generation is exploring of what it means to want more than just being a mom, having a business, pursuing a career, reinventing yourself. Because like you said, you can get lost in the identity of when you are in the mom mode and you are a new mom. It's just so vastly new, and that, little person needs you so much in those moments because they know nothing else but your smile, your scent, your its food source, its guiding light. So of course, we're trying to essentially create a manual for ourselves, that roadmap on this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a leave. I'm going to try navigating something, a little different. Perhaps I'll do a career change because the 9 to 5 that I currently left before is no longer serving me. So we're asking ourselves the hard questions. And our community really focuses on asking those hard questions because there is, I don't want to say a lack of a disconnect, but there is a disconnect in the assumption of that motherhood is beautiful, but it's also very hard. So, having that honest conversation upfront that it is hard navigating and juggling all the aspects of what that brings is really important to put that at the forefront of the conversation. So that's what we do here at VMC, which is we support the mother. We're not only, a childcare proponent or, giving parentals the guidance that they need. We really focus on what the mother needs so that she can then, pour it into her children as well.
Right, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
And you could only do it for so long. And I can tell you from experience, because I did it for so long and I wasn't the best version of myself. I completely snapped and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And I was still married at the time. Right now, I'm a single mom. And if I wouldn't have done the work that I had done while I was still married, I don't know how I would be able to manage everything that I do because it is so hard as a single mom, having kids with such big age gaps, right? And trying to make sure that you're giving both the same type of attention. My youngest one is autistic, so the therapies and, the attention that needs and all of that, on top of the fact that I have absolutely no help when it comes to that. Plus, I have to run my business. I go to school full time. There's a lot that's going on. And the other day I told myself, I took a moment and I go, wow, I'm so grateful for the work that I've done and the community that I have, because I think anybody else would have snapped by now. And I had my therapist appointment this week on Wednesday. And when I gave her an update of everything that's been happening, she told me the same thing. She goes, anybody else would have probably snapped. And you come back from things so effortlessly and ready to just take on the next step, and in such a positive way that I left her speechless. I was like, great, I'm leaving my therapist speechless, but it just gave me that reassurance because
Right. That's it.
I
You
just
needed
told
that.
myself that. I just told myself that a week ago. And then for it not to just be in my head, it was great to hear. But this is why we do the work that we do, right? Because we want to help other people be able to get to that space where we're not just, it doesn't have to be that hard. It really does take a village, right? Like you said,
Oh, yeah.
things have changed so much. Back in the days, when they said it took a village, we were in the same village. I'm taking care of your kid. Your kids are mine. My kids are yours. We have each other's back while our husbands are providing, catching, hunting, whatever, and it's just not like that now. So creating that space that you have is so important. And it's evolved so much because it started in the pandemic. And it's
Yeah.
evolved so much since then. Last year, you hosted your first summit. So I attended. It was amazing. And just to see you on stage and just I could feel how in that moment when you were awarded by a key of the city by the
Oh,
mayor. I have goosebumps right now thinking about it. I connected with your energy in that moment and I could feel how I almost get emotional because it was almost like all the hard work was worth it to get to this moment, right?
thank you, Romy.
I
Now I'm
felt
getting
that.
like because the idea of the key to the right, it was for the village of Palmetto Bay. It's like a joint effort, right? Like in October, we got a proclamation by the mayor for infant and miscarriage awareness month and made it an official proclamation in law that day is observed for virtual mom collective mothers who are going through that. So the key, going back to the key, is just the beginning of the process of like when I said, to the mayor, I really want to host and amplify the voices of moms and using you because you have roots in government and you have a voice and that's one thing that's really important, right? There isn't a lot of women in government and there's all these different laws and bills and rights that go and dictate the way that we essentially, one, can birth babies, and two, just like everything when it comes to raising them in a different, in just from infancy all the way to high school. And we really need to pay attention now more than ever in these moments and align with our government, our constituents who are, one, female, and two, mothers, because they're the ones who are going to advocate for the same things that we want. And our voices are going to be heard so that we can continue. So it starts with, an idea, sparked in a pandemic in a humble Facebook group setting where we're all saying the same thing. We're drowning. We can't go back to our jobs. We're mother, doctor, nurse, provider. And not to say that, whether you are, in a supportive relationship or not, the root of that weight really always holds on the mother, because biologically we're carrying, much more of the caretaking necessities than our spouses or, our partners. Just essentially biologically, that's the way it happens. So of course, we're built to be strong, but it doesn't mean that we don't have, we're not completely immune to certain things. And so when you have, people listening to your mission, and you have other women who have roots in government and have your best interests, it is really important to know that that key that's given to you in your hands is just opening the beginning of a door that you're going to go down to, and it's going to change not only your life, but the lives of the mothers that are so important and essential to keep amplifying. And that was just the beginning of what the key represents. And it just meant so much to me, because that's such a big component. And equality starts with women being part of the same conversations as men in a political setting. So just so important, super important. I can go on and on and all about that, about advocacy, but yeah, thank you for connecting in that moment. That key is just as much as yours as mine,
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very beautiful moment. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention that I felt you. I really did feel you. And I was like, you fucking go, girl. Yeah, I was like, you go, girl. It was
I'm gonna bring the key to the summit this year again. Okay. She'll probably be there because she loves everything I do, and I love everything she does. So
it's amazing.
That's the way it has to keep doing. You just keep supporting,
Yeah. So why don't you share a little bit of the summit, and what can somebody expect when they buy the ticket?
So
that are local.
It's the summit this year. It's called The Way Forward. It's Virtual Collective's essential, I want to say, one of their key events that happens in the beginning of the year. And The Way Forward is sort of uniting the different aspects of what it means to be a mother, right? The aspects of whether she, started a business during the pandemic, is recreating herself, touching on this identity of matriceness of what happens to the woman and the mother, what happens to that union, and when you merge those two identities, what is the next step? Essentially, we're going to have the same format as last year. We're going to have incredible panelists this year. The only difference is that this one's it's going to be a little more spicy, because we're going to touch on things that really, I don't want to say I guess they strike a fire in your heart, because again, it talks about the way that when we make decisions based on finances, based on emotions, based on, creativity or muses, these are all thought processes and all feelings that are very valid. So, what does that mean in a focus-based environment where a summit can bring that to the forefront? So that essentially is igniting the fire and the conversations where you get to talk to these panelists that could literally change your life like they've changed mine in the past. I know I've changed lives, and I continue to do so with providing this space in this environment. And we're kicking it off on March 2nd in partnership with Florida International University at the Frost Art Museum. It's Women's History Month in March. very important bringing the same idea of like what happens in first of all, Women's History Month obviously is observed in March, but Women's History is not just about observing it in a month. We have to talk about how maybe like it's only been 103 years since that amendment was ratified so that we could have the opportunity to vote, which that really in retrospect is not a long time ago. It's 100 years ago. That's nothing. So that means that we're still kind of very much against the clock, and those things have a big delineation on the way that we're going to be voting as women for the next presidential election. Things have changed. Obviously, there is a lot more of us representing, but it doesn't stop there. Like we can't expect this to be a non-cyclical event. So, the summit is mirroring all of it. Like, you know that you have this idea, this fire, this feeling inside. We're going to help you for the next steps, the way forward. We are going to, the theme was hopping into this car. You're hopping into the car with us, and we're driving you into the future. And we're going to hold your hand because you're the driver. You're the driver, right? Essentially, you are the person who's going to drive yourself into the future that you deserve. And we're going to give it all. We're going to give grants, to empower you financially. We're going to give you the connections to the women who talk about STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and anything in a management position. We're going to talk to C-level suite people who are, making really waves, whether it's a startup, whether they have their own, AI-based company, which offers more flexibility and remote work, which is very critical for a mom who is, perhaps navigating the aspects of a schedule of little ones like myself. We're going to talk about what it really means to own a business.
Hey, it's me, Romy. I want to share a moment with you. We often talk about healing, growth, and doing the work on this podcast. But where do you start? When you're feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges, trapped in the past, worried about the future, or like you're constantly battling your own thoughts and emotions. Living in a reactive state versus response, passing up opportunities because of lack of confidence and fear, not knowing how to set boundaries with others, but most importantly with yourself. That's why I created my Healing the Root Cause program. It's for those out there feeling overwhelmed and yearning for change, connection, authenticity. Pretty much, you're tired of your own shit. Together, using my proven root framework, we'll recognize your triggers, overcome the past, operate with confidence, and transform your life. As I say, it's not all love and light, and this healing journey is about confronting the shadows and embracing the mess, but still loving yourself through it all. I'll be right there with you, guiding you on this journey, every raw moment, every breakthrough, every step of the way. So if you're feeling that tug and want to apply to work with me, fill out the application in the show notes, and we'll see if we're a good fit for each other and take it from there. Either way, I'm rooting for you.
And putting in the time and the investment, because everyone, sometimes may not understand that being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. It's really hard work. You got to do so much generational work, right? Deconstruction, whether you are perhaps like, you and I come from a Hispanic household and background, and really put into consideration those things that don't align with the kind of, mother and person that you are, moving forward. So we're going to talk about those things that, maybe sometimes traditional is not the most essential thing and functional thing to do for yourself. We're going to talk about, childcare, which is a huge part of equality in the workplace. We essentially have to pick sometimes, and it's difficult for us. And it's also mapping the way that we are going to be, who we're going to be in the future, because we're making decisions based on the availability and access to our children. And we're making decisions based on those needs of whether they're unmet. And when they're unmet, you're saying like, okay, well, I can't afford this because, I don't make, X, or as a household income, I don't make X in my household. So, I'm not going to send them to daycare or, whatever. I'm going to homeschool them, etc. And so essentially when you're doing that, you are obviously making a decision of a big financial decision. later on, perhaps maybe 10 years down the road, when you decide that they're a little bigger, they're gonna say, I'm ready to go back to work, and then, moms are met with, oh, why do you have resume? So much gap in your resume, because I've been raising my family for the past like 7 years. I've been homeschooling, childcare is unaffordable. So it's like that fork in the road. You either choose the left or choose the right. And we're here to tell you, you don't have to pick left or right. You get to decide if you want to go forward. You get to decide if you're going to go do both. I am going to actually go back to work, and I'm going to find either a corporation that supports, my childcare, or two, I'm also going to create my own business and really put in the work so that I create a roadmap, and I don't have to get to decide whether I want to be with my child at this time, and be available to them whenever they need me. So those are tough questions to ask ourselves, but those are the questions that we are going to be asking our attendees, because we're essentially saying there is so many aspects as to how to be a mother, but no one gets to tell you pretty much the path of how you're gonna drive into that future. There is a lot of resources out there. It's just getting access and connection to the right people. And two, very important, connect with your local government, because they have a big aspect of what that future is going to look like, not just for you, but for your children. Yeah. So if you have daughters or sons, what they get to do and decide based on what they want to do when they become parents,
Yeah.
So that's what they can expect. It's going to be really, really cool.
I'm excited. I'm gonna, be able to go again this year. And you mentioned something that made me think. I was a supervisor for DCF prior to leaving and going off on my own. And because of my child's special needs and how much he needs me, there's no way I could work for anybody else. I have to work for myself. It's impossible, because it does all fall on me. It all does fall on me. So it's a beautiful thing what you're doing.
Now let's take a moment for that, Romy, because it falls on you, and you carry the weight, and you make it look effortlessly to everybody, right? Or they not, you make it seem like you've got it together. And this is not to say you have it together, because mothers always show like they have it together. And inside we may be like crumbling, but we keep it together, not only for ourselves, but for our kids, to show really when they down the path, they'll know, my God, my mom, how did she do this? Like sometimes my own mother is like, how do you do all this? Like, how do you do all, because I show up.
Yeah.
I have to show up.
Yeah. My 13-year-old, I don't know how many times my 13-year-old asked me, and it's always in the car for some reason, he goes, Mom, how do you do it? How do you do it? Like, and then he starts going down all the list of things that I do. And he goes, and then you take care of us, and you cook, and you feed us, and you have to deal with Ian. And how do you do it? And I go, I just do it. I just do it. But I've learned also not to be so hard on myself and doing what's important in that day, right? Before, super long to-do list. And now I just have to break it down and be like, okay, what is the most important thing that I need to do today? And that's what I do without beating myself up, because I am doing a lot. If not, then I'm just going to become a huge bully to myself, and I'm not doing that either.
Oh, yeah. No, and imposter syndrome is a thing, It's, I don't want to say a thing.
No, it is.
We go through it. It's like the shadow that never goes away. He goes away for a while. I call him a he. I don't know why. But sometimes I look back and like, it's always at the end of the year. And I feel like it comes right before my kids' birthdays. And I call him like the shadow, the imposter shadow. And he starts putting ideas on my mind that, how could I think that I could possibly, continue this nonprofit work? And like, what makes me think that, anybody's going to start listening, continue to listen to, what I'm doing? And then I, pretty much take a sledgehammer. I let him talk to me for 2 weeks, and I let him get him down. He talks to me, like a bad boss would, like you're not worth anything. Like, how could you even think that anybody, you're was going to listen, you're a joke. And then, eventually when I tap into that, like I always say, like the inner uterine energy of, just because I'm not no longer having any more babies in my womb, I still tap into that energy, and I take a sledgehammer and I hit him really hard in the face, and then I don't see him for a while. And then once I connect with that energy, it's always, again, the point in time where you see the growth, right? The growth in your children, and you look back, because my kids are 5 days apart. So it's difficult to, like, yeah, they're 3 years, 5 days apart. My daughter's the 18th, my son's the 25th. So it's like those, it was a difficult journey for me because I had postpartum depression. I felt with my daughters, but in particular that disconnection with her, because I felt like I couldn't be there in the two capacities of celebration of their birthdays, right? My son, I felt I was so old when she was born. Like I was like, what? You're 3? Like in my mind. And this is when the imposter syndrome shadow started really coming out and say, like, this is a lot for you. I don't know if you can rise up. I don't know. You feel kind of sad. I don't know if you're able to handle this. And instead of kind of putting him at the back like I normally would, I started including him into my stories, into my writing. And I realized that imposter syndrome is very prevalent, especially for postpartum depression. It's not like postpartum depression goes away after right out, like after 6 months or a year. It's just an ongoing thread of work that you need to continue to do for yourself, because that essentially is just your brain saying to yourself that you're not enough, right? And so you have to constantly convince yourself that you're enough every day. And by doing that, when you show up for yourself, that's how you say you're enough. And I remember writing this piece called The Postpartum Carousel. And I read it every year right before my kids' birthdays, because it was so raw and literally talking about what we're saying. And I remember it was it's a strong piece, but it's so important because that is essentially motherhood. And, ins and outs, it's a beautiful chaos being a mother. I feel like we don't talk about, not nearly enough, what a wild ride it is. We talk about the wins, but we don't never mention and talk about the lows and the loss, And it's important to talk about loss. It's important to talk about grief. It's important to talk about the not so beautiful aspects of growth, and how that really is a huge, huge factor of your story, because you're giving your readers authenticity. So I think it's important to always be authentic when presenting yourself and your story, and talk always about the wins, celebrate the wins, but talk about the lows and what that looks like, because then that's where your moms are going to connect with you
Right,
as well.
100%. Yeah, because they feel seen.
They
They
feel
feel
seen.
seen. They connect in a sense like, oh shit, I'm not the only one. Like me too. Like I also feel this way. So it is normal. There is nothing wrong with me. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It is. And it's very, very important.
So important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. So you recently launched something, soft launch.
Yes. So we recently launched the VMC, the VMC channel. So for everyone who's been following us for the past, it's gonna be 4 years on March 5th, which is crazy, knows that we started with the virtual webinars, obviously Virtual Mom Collective will always be virtual. And we started obviously the hybrid events in the past 2 years, which was very interesting in terms of format, but so amazing because so many women were showing up. And that's one of the greatest things you can do, right, for yourself, is show up. And so the webinars were once a month, every second Saturday of the month, and every month it was a different theme. Last year, we started to change a couple things, and we welcomed 6 new board members to continue, right, the idea of, like, how do we merge the virtual component into the virtual collective? Because there's one thing that we can't buy, slow down, make more of, and that's time. There's one thing that mothers just always never have enough of, and it's time. So having that virtual component is everything to a mom sometimes because she shops online, she makes big, huge business decisions online. She works from home sometimes, remote, 100% she needs to be online. Three, the social media that she, takes a break to connect with is online. So that virtual component equals time, and time is money. And money and the investment that you make is why we created the VMC channel. And the channel is going to work very similar to the webinars. We're going to be featuring, where it's not going to be panel style, but it's going to be featuring one amazing mom in our community, a mompreneur who's up and coming and making some serious waves and changes in the community. And we're going to be interviewing one mom a month. And we're starting on Sunday, actually. It's going to be really cool and exciting. And I'm excited because it's about elevating the voices of our mothers, right? We don't necessarily, realize how much we connect in person with people because that's when the magic really happens. Like right now we're making magic and we're connecting virtually, but essentially when we made the connection was in person, right? So virtually it's important to always continue that synergies because we don't get to see each other often. Like I haven't probably seen you since the summit or another event. No. I think I saw you at another event, but like essentially like the way that we connect is virtually, and that's how we keep tabs on one another. That's how we empower one another. That's how we keep, sort of engaging the same conversations with one another virtually. So we're launching officially, we already have some content on the channel. You can check it out on Vimeo. And the two commercials and all our previous I don't want to say commercials, but our previous events that had a theme or idea have essentially a little video, a vlog of themselves. So the previous events that we had in the past where we shot at the little farm, or there's also the two commercials for the summit. There is information and video content about Women United, which was on October 15th to observe Infant and Miscarriage Awareness Month with Village of Palmetto Bay, are just snippets, right, of the different aspects and events that are a huge part of our channel. So, the channel's going to have two things. It's going to have the Virtual Mom Collective board episodes of what's going on with their businesses, and essentially also plug in one mother a month. And by the way, I don't want to say one mother, one woman mother. There's a lot of non-biological moms who are part of our community. And we're also really important to say that just because you're not a mom doesn't mean you're not welcome. We're actually welcoming the fact that you love being, around other moms because we're women. We're women before we become our mothers. We don't change our skin. We're not like lizards, we're chameleons, but we're not different types of lizards, that hang out on the rock, we all get along. So about continuing that dialogue, it's really important because perhaps there's a lot of like mother curious women out there and they really want to know what it's like. And the best advice that I can give you is hang out with working moms. You want to know what it's like, be in the environments, see what it's really like, how they juggle it, and I think the channel is a great way to show what that looks like in the day in and day out, because there's so much that goes on. Before we did this, I'm sure there was things that we don't see necessarily in the channel that happened, the drop off, the wake up time, the dressing up, the getting ready, the answering emails, the listening. This is talking to an employee right now, prior to the interview, before this conversation happened, like the block out scheduling of our day, like what's going to happen after dinner time, bath time, etc. All those little parts that are essential to a mother's time. So essentially going back to the channel, that's what we're trying to capture of what that looks like the day in and day out.
One thing that's coming to me, like a message that's coming to me, is that I just want to say that there's a lot of women that don't necessarily say they're mothers because they've lost a child, and they are mothers as well.
Oh yeah, 1000%. You're looking at her, I had a stillbirth, and for a long time I didn't put myself in that category. I was quiet for like 2 years, just not a biological mom, buried a baby, but in the eyes of this world that we live in, they were telling me that that doesn't, equate to me being a mother. And then when I had my son, the rainbow baby, I got to decide. It really hit me that I had been one all along. I didn't understand that it's not like something that you find in the dictionary. And I think if there's one thing that I convey to moms or to women out there, and no one gets to tell you where you put yourself, you cannot put yourself in a box. You cannot, take a selection of like, non-mother or mother, like that really shouldn't be something that you, one, should answer ever. And two, no one else gets to decide and to tell you that they're not that. And there's so many women who join and tell me the same thing, like, oh, I'm not a mom, is that okay? 1000%. And I hope nobody answers or nobody tells you, gives you an answer that it's not okay, because who the hell are they to decide to tell you what what you are and who you are and how do you captivate yourself? The word mother is so universal and it's so applicable to so many things. Like, we are our own greatest advocates. So if there's one thing that you can do is just advocate for yourself in the best way possible and never ever put your name next to a box.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you, so maybe that's why it came to me, so you could share that beautiful story.
See, yeah, she's my angel baby. That's a big proponent and connection I have with one of my board members, Natalie Pizarro, who like literally opened. I say that with the greatest compassion, who opened the floodgates for me when she started talking about her story. I was like, she unlocked the door to that part of me where I was like, oh my God, like, what if, of course, like, this is so valid and so unique. And because I was conditioned to think, and in also in my industry, because I work with men, right? So I didn't want to feel less than, and that imposter syndrome really came into the play. Like, don't tell them, they're gonna think you're weak. They're gonna know, they're gonna know that you're not gonna be able to do this job. Like, obviously, I've endured labor 3 times, so like I can do hard things.
Yeah.
Women and moms in particular can do really hard things.
Yeah.
And no one else gets to decide what those hard things are.
Yeah. Now, Natalie does have a very powerful story. She's actually been on the podcast, so if you guys haven't heard that episode with Natalie Pizarro, I would definitely suggest you go back and listen to it, because just the way that she overcame it and a lot of people could have gone down a really dark like road, which is okay too, because we don't know how to handle certain things, right? But
Absolutely.
I feel it's a very powerful episode to listen to.
Oh yeah, no, 1000%. I talk about it all the time on how that is one of the greatest things that you can do to support yourself on, like, through maternal mental health. Our mental health as moms has just really declined since the pandemic, and you see the need because we've had to pivot, we've had to shift, we've had to do the impossible possible, which is like, act like a pandemic really didn't happen and just go with what you've learned in the past and just figure it out all by yourself, or maybe not, but just what that did to our minds. I had my daughter during the pandemic, and it resurfaced a lot of the storyline of when we lost our first baby, our first daughter, and I couldn't. I was so I feel like paralyzed by that whole trauma, which I thought I had worked out, but it just showed that I hadn't. And I think it was important because to be very transparent with our viewers and our community of what that looked like, and showing up to events and not talking about like, and I'm not okay right now. Right now I'm in this is what I'm going through, and it's not okay, but it's going to be okay because I have you guys. I have this voice, and I have this opportunity to share of this is what PPD does. This is what trauma looks like. This is what being a mom really is, essentially. We it's like a roller coaster ride. It never stops. It goes up and down, and you just have to continue to learn how to drive it in the best direction for yourself. I love this. I love talking about like raw emotions and uplifting, because I feel like sometimes uncomfortable conversations, sometimes it can be very overwhelming to others in the moment. But I can guarantee when you open yourself, and I love the name of your podcast, that just came to my mind, like not all love and light. Like that's basically motherhood. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. It has a beautiful aspect, but we have to turn our purpose into action and measure it with the good, the bad, and the ugly, like the movie, the good, bad, and the ugly. You have to bring all those people to town so that you can continue forward.
Yeah. And that's important in so many aspects. And that's why I remember when the name of the podcast came to me, and it was like, yeah, this is what I am. Like, it's not all love and light. Sometimes people think that I seem a little bit too intense or just, very in that strong energy, but I feel that it's important to talk about the things that are not our highlight reels. Talk about
Exactly.
how we're not feeling our best, and not only talk about the great things, because it gives a false sense of reality to a lot of people. And
1000%.
and like you said, we connect when we are real. You know why? Because the highest form of energy frequency that people do connect to is authenticity. That's why when people are who they are 100% and they show up as themselves, people connect with them in a way that is very effortless, because they could feel when someone's being fake and when there's something just not right. The all love and light and peace and love and everything's fine and oh my gosh and everything's going to be okay. Like, yes, things will turn out the way that they're supposed to, but sometimes it's not okay, and it's not all love and light. Like, sometimes things are really shitty, and we need to talk about it just so we know that we're not alone. So the name of the pod, I was like, yes, it's available. Nobody has it. I was so happy, because I feel a lot in the work that I do and how I try to show up is in that sense, because I feel just like you do, it's very important, because it's not all love and light.
No, 1000%. 1000%.
Well, thank you, Denise, so much for showing up today and sharing your beautiful story and the wonderful work that you're doing. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we end the episode?
No, this has been so refreshing. It's so good to see your face.
Yeah.
I love everything that you're doing. I wanted to take a moment to commend you and your journey these past 2 years. We've been watching you and the way that you have, I always say, like, when your wings grow and you just start to fly, and we're all here for it. We're here for you and everything, and every aspect of everything that you're doing as a person, as a mother, as a business owner. You're freaking amazing, man. Romy, you're killing it.
Thank you. Thank you. I am killing it. It's definitely not easy. And some days I'm just like, I might snap today, but we won't get there.
Yeah.
We're riding the
Yeah.
edge. We're riding the edge.
1000%. Exactly. We'll say sorry and do better the next day, and the next day, and the next day.
Right. Correct.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having
You're
me.
welcome. All right, guys, if this episode was insightful, make sure that you share it, you like it, you leave a comment, and make sure to, if you're in the area, buy that ticket to the summit. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be there. And remember, guys, it's not all love and light.